Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Bank of Utah Championship DFS Tactics Show. Per usual on a Wednesday night, we're going to take our final look at the forecast for Ivins, Utah. See if there has been a wave advantage that has developed. We're going to take a look at my mixed condition model, my rankings, and at the end of the show, we'll make some lineups. So we have a lot to get into. Let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I place research every Monday regarding some course info, patterns of previous winners, players in the field who fit those patterns. Didn't do anything for the Black Desert or Bank of Utah Championship since this is only the second year of this tournament with only 1 year of prior data. But normally, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics Show, so that'll be out later this evening when I finalize my lineups. You want to see the players that I'm betting with my own money and using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. I can't recommend it enough. He's making some enhancements this fall to that article, so he isn't sending out much for The Fringe this during the fall portion of the schedule, but he is providing his deluxe version, which has his top values, his favorite plays, projected ownerships, all of that. So make sure you're subscribed to his article and go follow him over on social media. Show him some support. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. I've got a poll question typed up, so I would love the community's feedback on that. And then, who is your winner? Who are you targeting most? Who are you staying away from? How do you think the Black Desert Resort course is going to play this year? Is it going to be similar to last year with winning score up into the mid-20s? Do you think we approach 30? Do you think it plays tougher? So feel free to put your thoughts and opinions in the chat. And, of course, ask any lineup questions that you have. I'd be more than happy to answer as many of those as I can. And if you aren't able to catch the show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Bank of Utah Championship. And we're going to start, as we always do on a Wednesday evening, with the super forecasts for Ivins, Utah. Let me get situated here. Make sure I changed the title of the stream or show and the thumbnail, which it looks like I have. Let me post this poll question real quick. The poll question, we've got a lot of ownership coalescing at the top of the price board. Which of the 20+% projected owned players are you most fading this week? Whether you're playing them or not, that's that's up to you and how you answer the question and whatnot. But which of them are you most fading this week? Is it Matt McNeely, Alex Noren, Thor Bjornsson, or Kurt Kitayama? So a little bit of spoilers or foreshadowing there. There are 4 players, according to Gabe, who have 20+% in terms of projected ownership. So those are the 4 players there. I will definitely give my answer to that throughout the evening. We look at the forecast for Ivins, Utah, and it has been a very pleasant week for golf, and it looks like it's going to stay that way. Will be a little bit chilly in the morning, but the only wind, seemingly, at least through the cut portion of the tournament, is coming in tomorrow afternoon. So at some point, majority of the players in the afternoon wave on Thursday are going to be dealing with some wind. Now, the players that are teeing off around 12, maybe 12:30, they might only have a hole or two if this forecast is indeed, right on time and accurate and whatnot. But The guys that are teeing off late, as in 150 to beyond 2 o'clock, they're going to be dealing with a decent amount of wind, at least compared to the Thursday morning half of the draw. And then Friday looks pretty darn equal, maybe even a little bit more chilly in the morning on Friday, but still warming up to mid 70s. But the afternoon wave on Friday doesn't have this wind that it looks like, at least per wind finder, that the Thursday afternoon wave has. So because of this, I have a moderate advantage to the Thursday AM, Friday PM portion. Now you can agree, disagree. You can always argue to what extent or how much of an advantage this is. But in my opinion, because the only wind we see is here, I do think this gives a moderate advantage to the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon wave, in which I've given those players a slight boost. I certainly used those players in any tiebreaker scenarios if I were debating on one player or another for my lineups, things of that nature. I don't think it's a severe advantage, but it is enough for me to factor it. If we zoom out, we take a look at the weekend. Looks very similar to Thursday. Maybe just a touch of wind picking up Saturday afternoon, and much the same on Sunday. So that is a look at the forecast for Ivans as of 9 o'clock Eastern Wednesday night. So if this is the final forecast that you're able to look at before you submit your lineups and all that, I would give a slight to moderate advantage to the Thursday AM, Friday PM. Okay, so with that, I actually keep that up in case there are questions later. But we'll move to Fantasy National. The players in the field this week, we know that there have been 2 field changes. Eric Van Rooyen and Sammy Valimaki, originally committed to play, have decided to withdraw. Not a whole lot in terms of review for this week or for tonight that we haven't extensively covered throughout the week. You could maybe look at easy, but I've kind of put that in to some of the mixed condition model. If you wanted to see just a big picture view, your top players in the field this week, when rounds have been easy this calendar year: Kevin Roy, Cameron Champ, Kevin Yu, Aldrich Potgeider, Matt McNeely, Taylor Montgomery, Michael Thorbjornsen, William Mao, Takumi Kanaya, and Stephen Fisk. That's really about the only filter that we're going to really have a strong look at this evening. So with that, why don't we just go ahead and jump into the mixed condition model that I have made for the Bank of Utah Championship. We're going to start with 5% off the tee. I mentioned how I still think this is an iron play and putting course. Now last year distance definitely mattered, or the bigger distance you had, the more advantageous you were against your fellow competitors. I'm going to just bring up last year's leaderboard very, very quickly. But still, your winner was slightly negative in terms of distance and didn't hit a whole lot of fairways compared to the rest of his competitors. The reason why I'm not overweighting off the tee this week is these fairways are extremely wide. They're very generous, and you're sitting at elevation, so everyone's gaining distance. It is just hard to gain strokes off the tee here unless you are elite in terms of distance and elite in terms of fairway finding. So I only have 5% in terms of off the tee in totality. I do have another metric that is driving related I'll talk about here in a little bit, but 5% off the tee, 20% in approach. I still think this is going to be the most important factor this week. When we look at last year's leaderboard, everybody in the top 10 gained on approach to some level or extent. Lucas Glover went nuclear with the irons, but everyone gained in the top 10. So I still see this as favoring good iron play, especially because these greens are large, 7,000 square feet. The greens are very, very contoured, ridges and runoffs, portions of the green. You're going to have to hit the right area of the green, if you will. Quadrant, I think is the word I'm looking for. So 20% in irons, 10% in putting, and I normally don't like putting a whole lot of weight into putting. With that said, I've got this multiple course filter. This is a very, very, very small sample size, but all this is last year's Black Desert, last year's Charles Schwab, this year's Charles Schwab, and this year's BMW Championship. Those courses, at least per the GCSAA, all have 007 bent. And when I went back and did a pretty deep statistical study, the guys that putt well at Colonial, at the Charles Schwab, also putt well at the Black Desert last year and continued that into the Charles Schwab this year. There were only a few players that played in the BMW, like Matt McNeely and I believe Kitayama and Tom Hoagie. What I'm getting at here is they were very, very consistent. If players were poor putting at the Black Desert or the Charles Schwab, they generally were poor putting at the other. And if they were good at putting on one of those two courses, if they played the other event, they generally were pretty good too. The main player that I am thinking of is Patrick Rogers. Rogers gained last year at the Black Desert 5.7. Very, very strong week. He also then comes to the Charles Schwab this year, gains 5.2. Now, again, fully admitting this is a very small sample size. He didn't play in the BMW. Missed the top 70. So didn't play at the BMW. What I'm getting at is it does appear that in a very small sample size, the 007 bent is fairly consistent among the players who putt well and who don't putt well on it. 10% might be a little bit heavy, especially considering how small the sample size is, but this is kind of my lean this week in really focusing on who has putt well on this surface. So 10% on 007 bent, which is this filter here. 10% driving distance. I am favoring the Bombers over the fairway finders this week, especially since at elevation, fairway finders are going to be adding some distance. This course sits roughly at 3,000 feet above sea level. So I'm going to favor the Bombers, players like Pot Guider, Cam Champ, things of that nature, players of that nature, as long as they're not hitting it into a different area code, they're going to have a pretty decent advantage this week. Being able to drive both the drivable par 4s, take advantage of the par 5s and 2, things of that nature. So 10% distance off the tee. 10% birdies are better when rounds are easy. There are several amazing scoring opportunities around the Black Desert Resort. Several eagle opportunities. The drivable par 4 on the back. 3.5 almost eagle rate. But the short par 4 on the front, quarter of a shot under par. The par 5s, quarter of a shot, almost a half a shot, more than a half a shot, 2/3 of a shot. Lots of scoring opportunities around here, so I want to see who is adept at going low, especially when it's easy, when it seems like everybody's going low. Who is really enhancing their scoring opportunities in that regard? 10% birdies are better when rounds are easy. 5% bogey avoidance when rounds are easy. I was a little surprised to see this Monday night in the Data Dive show, but bogey avoidance in terms of raw numbers was actually more important than birdies gained. The Eagles also were very, very high. So I didn't want to make bogey avoidance more than birdies or better gained, but it will be important that players just don't give back too many shots, considering how easy this course is. There aren't a whole lot of bogey opportunities. There's one pretty difficult or somewhat likely double bogey on the 13th, long par 4 there. But you don't have any holes that yielded a bogey 20% or more of the time. So it's going to be imperative that players find their par, as opposed to dropping a shot, to not fall behind what I think is going to be a rather impressive scoring pace this week. So 5% bogey avoidance, again using the filter when rounds are easy. 15% in total procs. Again, a little bit of a strong lean for me. We looked Monday night in the Data Dive show how the Black Desert Resort played last year, and McCarty 82 doesn't seem like a great number, but that's slightly less than field average. It's not terrible. Schmid, Harris English, but look at all of these impressively high numbers in the top 20 in terms of total procs. I mean, it was a pretty big deal. Again, highlighting the fact that the players are going to need to hit the proper quadrant of these greens, considering they're separated by ridges and humps and noses and what have you. The greens are going to be pretty fast as well, at least they were last year. So it's going to be imperative that that players are just generally hitting their iron shots closer to the hole than the other players. I do have 5% in 175 to 200 and 200 plus. I still think, gosh dang it, I still think these two ranges were the most important overall over here. These two. So that's about my lean this week, other than putting a little bit more emphasis into 007 bent putting, is to look at the 175 to 200 and 200 plus and really highlight those players. So a lot in terms of proximity this week. We finalized the mixed condition 10% par 4s. I really toyed with looking at the drivable par 4s, the 500 plus par 4s. In the end, par 3s don't really matter here. And even though the par 5s did play a pretty big factor last year, you would think that most professionals are going to take advantage of the par 5s. So I really want to see who has been the best at par 4s and par 4 scoring. And there's a good mix of par 4s around the Black Desert Resort. You've got one fully drivable, one semi-drivable par 4. But you have two from 400 to 450, 3 500 plus. So it's a good mix of par 4s here. I want to see, in general, who's just best on par 4s. And then we round out the mixed condition model. This needs to be 3-putt avoidance. So just be aware of that. That is 3-putt avoidance. I don't know why it's saying strokes gained putting. It is 3-putt avoidance. But 3-putt avoidance is going to be a pretty big deal as well. So with that, we will now move to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings for the Bank of Utah Championship. As a reminder to returning viewers and for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The Fantasy National rank, which is a straight numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model we just talked about, the metrics, percentages, filters that we just used. Fantasy National will spit out a ranking. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value at how well they have played that course, normally in the last 5 years. With this only being the second year, this is how they did last year. Obviously, you see Matt McCarty won, so he has, the lowest course value you can have, whereas others like Rico Hoey finished tied 21st, Kitayama finished tied 25th, etc. So I do factor in prior course performance. And then lastly, we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options off of our fellow contestants. So these are projected ownerships from Gabe, who has done very, very well in 2025 with his projected ownerships. He's kind enough to share that with me. So projected ownerships are also a factor into my rankings. It is important to note that tee times and half of the draw is not part of my rankings. That is why I add the column and give you the information. For this week, you see that I have the Thursday AM, Friday PM in green, and I have the Thursday PM, Friday AM in orange, not full red, because I don't know, I'm not confident that it's going to be a major advantage, but I do think it is an advantage for the players playing Thursday morning and Friday afternoon. So with all that said, my rankings for the Bank of Utah go as such. 7,500, Kevin Roy is my number 1 player. You see he was second by the metrics and Fantasy National. He also rises because he's less than 10% owned. Thorbjornsen, technically by the pure numbers, would have been number 1, but he falls because he is the most projected owned player in the field. Kevin Roy is my number 1 player. Cameron Champ, number 2. Kurt Kitayama, 3rd, even though he did not play well at the Bay Current. I shouldn't say that. He ball struck very well at the Bay Current. He just did not make a putt, which you can see that he has also struggled specifically on 007 bit, but he is still 3rd in my rankings. Rico Hoey, 4th. Carl Phillips, 7,100. Carl Phillips is 5th for me. Thorbjornsen, Christopher Ventura, Matt McCarty, defending champion Matt McCarty, Matt McNeely, and Davis Thompson round out my top 10. I really don't have an issue with any of this in terms of my top 10. In fact, all of the top 10 per Fantasy National stayed in the top 10 for me. After factoring in course value and ownerships, they just get jumbled because of those factors. But I don't really have an issue. People might be a little bit surprised by Carl Phillips, Chris Ventura, but I mean, even by the numbers, by the raw numbers, they were still in the top 10. Ventura, I've talked about quite a bit in the fall already. He's been playing pretty well, even if the results don't show. 4th in total procs. He's actually putt well on this surface. Again, small sample size, but he has putt well on this surface. And he's also really good at long irons. So take that for what you will. Carl Phillips, much the same. Little bit 3-putt avoidance bugaboo there, but otherwise, I mean, top 10 in birdies are better when it's easy. 5th in total procs. Been good on this surface in the small sample size. Got plenty of distance. I like both of these players this week, but you see one of them is on the supposed good half of the draw and one is not. Otherwise, don't really have an issue here with any of the players in my top 10. So we'll stop rambling on that. We'll sort on the price board, see where we'll see where the our fellow contestants seem to be going at various areas in the price board. I am wanting salary, that's F. And then see how we can maneuver around them. In the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we have 3 players this week. Mav McNeely at 10.5, Alex Noren at 10.2, Michael Thorbjornsen at 10,000 even. Just so you're aware, my numbers are gathered solely from the PGA Tour. I understand Alex Noren has been playing very, very well on the DP World Tour, so these numbers are going to be very low on him considering the form he has been in worldwide. But with that said, I'm still not going to play Alex Noren. So that is my answer to the poll question. If I miss on Alex Noren, that's fine. I understand he's playing, much better worldwide. This is just, you can't play everybody. So I'm going to play Alex Noren, especially since there's a lot in the 9s that I like. And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly all that high on Mav McNeely, even though he did right in my top 10. On the bad half of the draw, irons have been okay, not elite for this field like you need them to be if he's going to be the top priced player. Proximity's been, good, not great. Does get birdies when it's easy, second. But he's also kind of struggled lately with the long irons. And I just have too many concerns with some of his statistics if he's going to be the highest priced player. And at 20%, don't get me wrong, I'm going to play him. I'm going to play a little bit of Mav McNeely, but it's not much. I'm going to be pretty decently under 20% because I'm going to play a lot of Thorbjornsen. I know he's the highest projected owned player. I'm just very confident that he's going to play well, which means you should stay away from him and play Alex Noren. If this is anything like the Bay Current, where I was completely off of Xander and played all the Kitayama was very middling and Xander wins. So if it's the same thing here, you play all the Alex Noren and you stay away from Thor. But I'm going to play Thor second in the irons. Proximity is really good. Has not putted this surface, at least officially. He withdrew from last year's Black Desert Championship. Fourth in distance, top 5 in birdies or better. Like, he just doesn't have a bad statistic across here. Excellent with his long irons. 3-putt avoidance is fine. There's a lot going for Thorbjornsen here other than his ownership. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to be extremely overweight on Thorbjornsen to counteract that. So in the 10Ks, I'm playing Thor, playing a little bit of Mav McNeely, out on Noren. Moving to the 9s, J-Day, Kurt Kitayama, Kevin Yu, Davis Thompson, Rico Hoey, Emiliano Grillo, Thorbjorn Olesen, and Matt McCarty. Really the only one that I'm not terribly keen on is Jason Day. For obvious reasons, he's well behind everybody else in his price range. Irons haven't been good. He hadn't even been putting well on this specific surface. Distance isn't great. Long iron proficiency has been very poor. Just no thanks on J-Day. I want to like Kitayama, but him being the second most projected owned player, bad half of the draw, everything is elite for him, good or elite for him, except for the putter. And we saw that at the Bay Current. If his putter doesn't cooperate, it can get pretty ugly for him. So I'm going to play Kurt Kitayama. I'm going to try to limit my use of him. I'm sure I'll be more than 20% though, because 4th in iron, 6th in procs, 3rd in distance, top 10 off the tee. He's got a lot going for him. Literally, it is just about the putter for him. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you've gotten your wagers finalized, gotten your lineups ready to go. Any questions, feel free to jump into chat with those, but it's good to see you this evening. Just going through the price board here. You missed a little bit of the 10Ks, or maybe you saw it but weren't in chat or didn't put in chat yet. But good to see you this evening. So there's a look at Kitayama. In fact, I'm not all that keen on Kevin Yu either. I'm going to play a little bit of Kevin Yu, but it's not very much. The irons haven't been great lately. We all know that he's just generally a pretty poor putter, regardless of surface. Rates out as one of the worst on this surface. Not a whole lot of distance. First and birdies are better when it's easy. So I'll play him, but the 14.5 to 15% ownership plus bad half of the draw, supposedly, I can get away from Kevin Yu because I really, really like these three here. I love Rico Hoey. I really like Davis Thompson, and I will not shy away from Emiliano Grillo either, despite the fact that they haven't putt well on this surface. You know, they have decent amount of distance. Grillo might lack a little bit, but Grillo's also, I mean, you see they've been 9th, 10th, and 11th in proximity. They're all top 25 in iron play. Rico Hoey's been 3rd in irons. I just like a lot here in the 9s, and that's where I'm going a lot of times in my lineups, is these low to mid 9s. Grillo's actually 3-putt avoided very, very well. He just hadn't putt well. Again, speaking to the fact that his irons and his procs have been very good, he just hasn't 3-putt much. You would think he would need to. He's going to need to make some putts this week, but he hadn't 3-putt much. So I like all three of these players. Grillo is the pivot off of the other two. I'm just very confident in Rico Hoey. So I understand that, you know, I'm touting the most owned player. I'm touting, you know, the second most owned player in the 9s, third most owned player in the 9s. I've got a lot of players in the 7s that I want to recommend to you all that are pretty unique. So in the 9s, no thanks on J-Day. I'm going to play very little of Kevin Yu. I want to get away from Kitayama, but I probably won't be able to. And then I'm going to play a lot, and I mean a lot, of Davis Thompson, Rico Hoey, and a little slightly bit less than Grillo. Like, for example, if I'm, you know, 50% Hoey, 40% Thompson, I might be 25 to 28% Grillo. But I do like a lot of these here. McCarty's fine as well. Defending champion, I don't see a reason why he won't play well again. I don't like the tee time. Supposed bad half of the draw. Pretty darn popular. I can get away from McCarty, but I will play him. Moving to the 8s, there's a few players in the 8s that I want to like, but considering how much I like in the 9s, and I'm, you know, really, really like Thor Bjornsson at 10,000, the 8s just kind of got squeezed for me in terms of using them. For example, Matt Wallace. I wanted to like Matt Wallace. Might not seem like the best fit for him here, considering his long irons, you know, leave quite a bit to be desired. But very good 3-putt avoider. He avoids bogeys. He's not going to give shots back at this course. Top 10 in irons. So I wanted to like Matt Wallace, but bad half of the draw, one of the more popular options in the 8s. I can get away from that. I wanted to like Pearson Coody, number 2 putter on this surface. But he hasn't been particularly great with the irons. Total procs has been pretty bad. Bad half of the draw. Like I'll sprinkle some Pearson Coody in some lineups, you know, 2 or 3 of them. But I'm not going crazy with it. I have a soft spot for Luke Clanton. I just believe in the talent. I do think he will, maybe not necessarily win, but I do think he will break out here fairly soon. So I'm going to play Luke Clanton in a lineup. Fisk, who won the Sanderson Farms, technically rates out fairly well. Good distance. He hadn't putt well on this surface. William Mao, also kind of interesting. But I'm not in love with any of these players because they just kind of get squeezed for me with all of the players that I like in the 9s and the players that I like, or I will, you know, mention and like in the 7s. So if you're in the 8s, I think I like Pearson Coody the most. That's the one I would I guess quote-unquote reach for to try and get into some lineups. William Mal's also kind of interesting. I don't like the tee time. I do think he might struggle a little bit with some longer irons. He's been very good from 175 to 200. So that's a look at the 8s. Moving to the 7s, the upper 7s. Despite the fact that I've been focused on distance, I'm not going to use Jesper Svensson this week. If a player is not a good putter, they're going to need to be excellent in both of these and with distance. Jesper Svensson's iron's been okay, but his proximity, particularly his long iron proximity, has been really bad. Really bad. So despite the fact that I'm leaning distance, like Jesper Svensson is one of the players that I'm not going to. Instead, in the upper 7s, take a casual look at Victor Paris. Lacks some distance. I'm not in love with the fact that he doesn't go super low when it's easy, but I love the irons here. He's generally a decent enough putter. Again, very, very small sample size, what we're dealing with there in that metric. But he's generally okay on bent. You see, in his career, he's been a above average putter. So I kind of like Victor Paris if you're up in the upper 7s. I'm not there a whole lot because I'm trying to get greedy. So it probably tells you the kind of lineups I'm trying to build. But I wanted to mention Victor Paris. Jaeger is fine as well. Finished second here last year. Finished 20 under. He can be very aggressive with his driver, considering there isn't a whole lot of trouble around the course. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you've been well. Haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Hopefully things have been going well for you. You're ready for everything Bank of Utah Championship. What was the Black Desert Championship last year. You got your wagers in. You got your lineups ready to go. But it's good to see you this evening. So that's how I see the upper 7s. A little bit of Victor Paris. A little bit of Stefan Jaeger. I'll probably have Mark Hubbard once because he's just analytically been decent. But I'm not really up in the upper 7s much because I'm in the mid 7s a whole lot. Cameron Champ, 7,600. Second in my rankings. 6th purely by the numbers. For whatever reason, Gabe doesn't seem like he thinks the public's off of him. Champ has historically not been a very good putter. Very small sample size. Been very good on this surface, or at least good on this surface. We all know about his distance. Goes low when it's easy. Look at these long iron. Gosh dang, it's off the end of your screen. Look at these long iron proximities. Very good. Second in bogey avoidance when it's been easy. I like a lot of Cameron Champ this week. Even your boy, P. Doug Gim, I don't hate. Much like Kurt Kitayama, it's just about the putter. The irons are starting to come back for Doug Gim. Prox is good. He's always going to, be fairly middling in terms of distance. He did finish top 25 here. It's all about the putter for Doug Gim. It's generally pretty bad. So take that for what you will. I don't hate Doug Gim. He's also on the perceived bad half of the draw, so I'd much, much rather play Cameron Champ at his price. Saying Jaeger's a steal. I tend to agree. That's why I wanted to make sure I used him a little bit. The only issue with Jaeger is he is in horrendous form. I don't like the form that he's in lately, particularly with off the tee. Missed his last 3 cuts to finish the regular season, if you will. Was pretty poor at the St. Jude. The Sanderson Farms left, quite a bit to be desired, especially with the off the tee. That said, Black Desert Resort is much more forgiving off the tee. These fairways are extremely wide. So I tend to agree with you. I was a little surprised to see Jaeger's price, Phil. But, I made sure to play him in X amount of lineups. I play many lineups, so I can't say that I just played him once. I played him maybe 3 or 4 times, but I didn't use him a whole lot because I am still a little bit concerned with his form lately, especially because I have Cameron Champ, right below him in price, and I'm pretty confident Cam Champ's going to play well here, even though Champ was very middling last year. I have a sneaky suspicion on Cam Champ. And then also in the mid sevens, Kevin Roy, my number one and number 2 player are in the mid sevens this week. Kevin Roy, the irons haven't been as great lately, decent enough on this surface, but first in par 4s, which I think are going to be, extremely important, carry significant amounts of importance this week. Top 10 birdies or better. Second in bogey avoidance when it's easy as well. His long irons have been good. Gosh dang it, it's still off the end of your screen. Long irons have been very good, so I'm all about some Kevin Roy, especially at sub 10%. Is this the week to fire on Hoagie? I would light a fire on Hoagie, not really, but I did not consider Tom Hoagie at all. So I would say no, or perhaps pour some gasoline on that fire for Hoagie. So I'm going to be up in the mid sevens a lot. That's also another reason why I'm not in the upper sevens, mostly showdown. Maybe because he's in the sixes. Let me get through the sevens and we can get to him. Elsewhere, look, I have a win bet on Bo Hostler. He was actually the first name I fired off in terms of wagers. He doesn't rate out well. He finished top 15 here and is generally a good putter on bent. He gained a whole lot tee to green at this place last year. Hostler gained a whole lot tee to green and then gave it away on the greens, which is not like Bo Hostler. Gained, 2.5 off the tee, 2 with the irons, a whole lot around the green, and then gives it back with the putter. That's not like Bo Hostler. Bo Hostler is generally a good putter. So I'm gonna bank on some regression to the mean here with his putter, thinking and hoping that he continues to play somewhat well in terms of ball striking. I know it hadn't been the prettiest lately, but he hadn't been an abject failure. He has shown signs of life, like at the Bay Current, like at the Wyndham. So I'm not going to use Bo Hostler at all in DFS, but I did want to say that I used him, or I placed a wager on him. I am much more akin to bet players like this that have these extremely large ranges of outcomes. Thinking that Bo Hostler might win. He also might finish 108th like I have here. I'd much rather bet those players than play them in DFS. Moving further down the board, you can take a look at Lee Hodges, finished top 10 here. With him lacking distance, he has to be very good with the irons. He generally is. And also takes advantage of par 4s. Top 20 in par 4s. Pretty darn good from 175 to 200. Now it's 200 plus, which you don't see the number, but you see the shading is bad. But it's worth a look at 7,400. Aldrich Potgeider, 7,300. This course plays fairly similarly to Vedanta. Long, although this Black Desert Resort isn't overly long, but generous, wide fairways. But if you're off the fairway, you're in deep trouble. And that is where Pot Guider finished second. So I do like the fit for Aldrich this week. I'm going to play quite a bit of Pot Guider, especially since he's on the perceived good half of the draw. Irons have been better. Number one in distance. Goes low when it's easy. Avoids bogeys when it's easy. I do have some concern with his long iron proficiencies, I do have some concerns with his long iron deficiencies. But considering how long he is, you wouldn't think he would need to rely on these ranges very often. So we'll see. I'm going to play some Pot Guider. I'm going to be well over 7% Pot Guider, but I do want to mention that I do like the course fit for him this week. Carson Young's another name to think about in the low sevens. Look, lacks a lot of distance, but everything else is pretty darn superb, especially in the main parts of the mixed condition model. Top 10 putter on this surface. Very good proximity. His irons have been very good lately. I like Carson Young. I really like Patrick Rogers, despite the fact that he is on the bad half of the draw. You know, top 15 last year, sub 5%. We looked at his putting at Colonial and at the Black Desert here last year. There's something about 007 bent that he is just very comfortable on. Irons are still good. They're still, Patrick Rogers like. His long irons are still good. Same with Carson Young. So I like both of these players. I like Rosner as well. So there's a lot in the low sevens that I like. Young, Rogers, Rosner. Elsewhere in the low sevens, Christopher Ventura, 7,000. Top 5 total procs. Good putter on the surface. Surprisingly, quite a bit of distance, at least compared to the others in this field. Good with the long irons as well. Take a look at Christopher Ventura. If you want to go even more on the putting, you can take a look at Nick Hardy. He's been very good in one tournament here. In one tournament on the Black Desert and one tournament at the Charles Schwab. Finished top 10 here last year. Nick Hardy could be worth a look. Thomas Rosenmuller, if you're not big on putting, if you're a big believer that the driver is going to be the big weapon this week, then take a long look at Thomas Rosenmuller. 5th in irons, top 20 distance, top 15 off the tee. He is ball striker extraordinaire with the Rico Hoey problem of just not a very good putter. Just not a very good putter at all. He's not putt this surface, so take that for what you will. I'm going to skip somebody that might be obvious in the low sevens based on my rankings, because I want to talk about him quite a bit. So let's move to the sixes. In the sixes, the top-rated 6K play for me is Ben Coles. You see, it doesn't look like our fellow contestants are doing much down here. 4.7, 4.8 Trey Mullinex. These two are about the only ones that are garnering any kind of attention. So I don't want to go overboard with Ben Coles since he is basically the most popular 6K play. But I figured I would mention him since he was the highest rated for me. Good half of the draw. Actually number 1 in irons in this field. Top 8 in proximity. Good putter on this surface in a limited sample size. So I wanted to mention Ben Coles, but I can't make him like the mad scientist play or anything because he is the most common or popular 6K play seemingly. A couple other names to think about. Joel Damon's always generally going to rate out well because he's good with the irons and proximity and whatnot. It's all about the putter. At his same price, you could maybe take a look at Jackson Suber. I know it's the bad half of the draw, but top 12 in proximity. He doesn't have the putting woes that Joel Damon does. And not only that, Joel Damon is elite at these long iron proximities, but Jackson Suber is not horrible either. 26th and 12th. So at Joel Damon's same price, you could take a look at Jackson Suber. Again, I'm not in love with it because, he's got his own warts. He's not great off the tee. Par fours, he's really struggled. But I wanted to give him a shout Ben Cole's a lock for showdown, going out first too. Yeah, I do like that, Phil, considering he is one of the first, if not the first group out. Laird also pops off a round or two. I'm just not there with Martin Laird. But I do like your shout on Ben Coles, especially for showdown, since he is first out tomorrow, Thursday a.m. So, mention Jackson Suber. The only other name that I'll mention, if you're really looking for some price savings, and I mean you're really digging deep here, 6,300 John Pack at least has some things going for him. Very limited sample size because he only played the Charles Schwab once, but he putt well, very well there. Proximity's good. The irons are good. He's been playing well on par fours. The issue is he's just in absolutely no form at all. Just hideous form. Missed cut at the Sanderson Farms. Made the cut to a pretty poor finish over the weekend at the Procore. Missed 4 cuts before that. I'm just saying statistically he does have a couple of things going for him. So if you're really looking for some price savings in your lineups this week, you could maybe look at John Pack. But believe me, he's got his own warts. He's not long by any means. Birdies are better when it's easy. It's not great. Bogey avoidance isn't great. I mean, he's got his own warts. But I did want to mention him because he does have a couple of interesting things going for him. You mentioned Tom Hoge. I cannot get there. Even his irons are not very good. Yes, he's good in total procs, but he's never been a good putter. Probably won't be a good putter. Lacks a lot of distance. Doesn't particularly go low, especially when it's easy. He's okay with these mid to long irons, but there's just not a lot here going for him. And he's in the bad half of the draw, supposedly. So I wanted to make sure I touched on him since you asked about him, Phil, but I can't in good conscience recommend a Tom Hoge when he's been pretty bad lately. Because you've asked about a couple of players this week that haven't been in very good form. Like you see, Bent is by far and away his worst surface by miles. Missed the cut in both of his events in the fall. FedEx St. Jude wasn't good. BMW was not the best. There's not a lot here to go on for Tom Hoge. I mean, if this is a hunch for you, then by all means, I will gladly admit that I was wrong if I'm wrong, but I just don't see Tom Hoge performing. Dunlap, a little bit much the same, really. The irons have been better, but not a whole lot here to go on. He's worst in the field in par fours. Not very good off the tee. He has been acceptable with these long irons. So I would, despite the ranking, Phil, I would probably go with Dunlap more than Hoge, but I don't like either of them, especially since they're on the bad half of the draw. But my mad scientist play this week, even though he's not in the 6Ks, is going to be Carl Phillips. That's why I skipped him in the low 7s. I was surprised when I saw this, but he's got a lot going for him. The irons, acceptable, not great. They're good. 5th in total procs. He's been good on this surface. He goes low when it's easy. A lot of people probably don't realize Carl Phillips won an event in 2025. It was an alternate field event, but he won the Puerto Rico Open, which is, the event opposite of the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I really like Carl Phillips. He's got quite a bit of distance. 7th and birdies are better. Avoids bogeys enough. Long irons are pretty good. And if you look, sorry, I hit the wrong tab there. If you look at his most recent form as well, with the exception of the Bay Current, he's been okay. Really. Procore wasn't stellar, but he gained ball striking. The Wyndham was pretty good. A little bit inflated by the putter. But again, he is a winner on the PGA Tour. And look at that. Charles Schwab. Same surface. Bam. Very small sample size. I cannot stress that enough. Very small sample size. But finishes top 15 there. Goes on a run of missed cuts. But has made the cut in both of the fall events that he's played. I like Carl Phillips this week. So I'm going to be extremely overweight on Carl Phillips. And he's the mad scientist play. He is finalizing a lot of my lineups this week. All right, let's make some lineups. Figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going and what lineups they're making, how we can maneuver around them. Most projected home player hurts, but it is what it is. Thor Bjornsson. I'm going to play a whole lot of Thor Bjornsson as well. But he is the most common or most projected owned player. Next would be Kurt Kitayama at 20.7. This, very well could be Rico Hoey or Matt McCarty because there's not a whole lot in the sevens that are getting popular. Like Takumi Kanaya, 9.5 is really where our fellow contestants seem to be somewhat bottoming out. All of the ownership is coalesced up in this top portion here. So Kanaya, Lee Hodges also close to 10%. And then in the upper eights, you've got a Sahith Theegala at 8%. Doug Gim at 9.5. Last one, what do you think of Harry Higgs? 7,000. Good half of the draw. Seeing good irons and good on this surface is promising. Wondering why Fantasy National really hates him. I'm guessing it's because of these par fours. He's been pretty bad. But of the ones that you have mentioned, the Tom Hoagies, the Nick Dunlaps, there's at least something going on here with Harry Higgs. Top 25 in irons. Let's just pull up Higgs very quickly. See what's going on with him. Oh, yeah, look at that. So his irons have been much better lately. 2 fall events, he's gained, 5.5 on the greens. This is the player of all the ones that you've mentioned that I could see getting behind. Especially since he's on the good half of the draw. I'm still not playing him, but I can actually see the argument for it, Phil. I can see the argument for it. He didn't rate out well for me, but there's enough here. Don't hate it. To finalize this lineup here, like this could be Mac Meisner, who is 11% or 12%, and then 7,600. Yeah, Doug Gim, I guess. I know this doesn't seem like it's a lot of ownership. This is just as much ownership as I can squeeze into here using the top 2 dogs, if you will. Thor Bjornsson, Kitayama. Other ways they could go about this, like if they drop off of Kurt Kitayama, come down to like a Matt McCarty, the Gim Reaper, your boy. Yeah, I don't hate him this week. I don't. It's just all about the putter for him. But he is getting some amount of love, P, at close to 10%. So he's probably not going to be as unique as you're hoping for. And then coming off of Meisner, like if we go like Homa here, Homa, Meisner, I need to drop 300. Anybody in the low sevens garnering anything? Carson Young, maybe. This might be a little bit over in terms of price, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of how some of these lineups might go. Thorbjornsen's, the most popular play. But all of the ownership is coalesced up in here with a little bit of Max Homa, a little bit of Mac Meisner, and then the various 9 to 10% guys in the sevens. So how are we maneuvering around that? Well, one way you can do it is try to beat these balanced lineups. You're basically going to have to incorporate some Emiliano Grillo or Thorbjorn Olesen to do that, since they are the big pivots. I haven't loved doing that. I've done it once or twice, but I've been mostly going quite a bit more greedy because there's a whole lot down here in the sevens that I like. Carl Phillips. Even Nick Hardy, I don't mind. Christopher Ventura, the 3.5%. Rogers, Rosner, Aldrich Potgeider, 7%. There's enough down here in the sevens that I've been comfortable coming down here quite a bit. Let's do Patrick Rogers on one. We'll do Aldrich. And that really frees up. I'm at 9,500 per player now. I can go Kitayama, Kevin Yu, Davis Thompson. Bam. There it is. That's a lineup that I would be more than happy to submit. If you wanted to come up to Thorbjornsen, easily can do that. Rico Hoey, I know he's a little bit more pricey, more ownership, but you go like Rico Hoey. I'm not as in love with Matt McCarty, so I can go like Grillo. And then 9,900, I would need to find 100 for Thorbjornsen, but, still nothing wrong with Kurt or Davis Thompson even. That's a fairly unique lineup that you have 3 players there. You're taking the pivot with Grillo, sure, but 3 players that are, going to be maybe not necessarily tournament favorites, but probably top 15 in terms of favoritism in the field. And then you're taking some what I think are very, very worthwhile shots in the low sevens. If you want to get super, super greedy, maybe you like Mav McNeely this week. You don't even have to come into the sixes, if you even want to play both of these players. Now you're going to finish out your lineup with, a lot of the low sevens, which I can do that. I can go Carl Phillips, Carson Young, Patrick Rogers, Kevin Roy, and that's going to be it. Carson Young, Rogers. Shoot, you can even go Cameron Champ in that regard. You don't even have to go onto the low sevens except for these two. You can have a lot of maneuverability this week. I'm not as in love with McNeely. Like I said, I'm playing him a little bit, but there's a lot of options here. In fact, if you want to get really, really super duper greedy, we'll see you, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Good luck this week. Let me know how you do this week for the Bank of Utah Championship. But always appreciate you jumping into the chat, taking some time out of your evening to watch and listen, P. Best of luck to you. If you go McNeely, Thor, and Rico Hoey, I mentioned there's a 6K play down there that you can look at. John Pack, Jackson Suber, Ben Coles. You mentioned Ben Coles. Rico might be just a little bit too much, but now you can filter this out. I like Stefan Yeager, like you mentioned, Phil, earlier. Like we can do Stefan Yeager. Kevin Roy's my number one player. I'm going to play him. 7,400. There are plenty of options there, like Lee Hodges, 7,400. I didn't talk about Taylor Montgomery. He's all in the short game. Pot Guider at 73. Carson Young, Rogers, even Antoine Rosner, 72. You mentioned Carl Phillips. Maybe leave a little bit of money on the table. Go to a Carl Phillips. Like, I'd be hard-pressed to believe this would be a lineup that's going to get duplicated, Phil. Especially since you're willing to go, low 7, 6, and then your two, whatever two studs you choose. Maybe it's McNeely Noren. Maybe it's Noren Thor. McNeely Kitayama, whatever. But, this is the kind of lineup that I've been building as well. Not as often, but I have. So, I'll end the show off showing you what my core has been. I've been all about some Thor Bjornsson. I know he's the most popular player, but I'm thinking he's going to play very well this week. As much as I don't like to admit it, Kitayama's probably going to end up being core for me. I understand these players all don't fit in a lineup. I'm just trying to show you the core. And then really it comes down to like Cameron Champ, Kevin Roy, Pot Guider, Rogers, Phillips. That's been my core. Max Homa core, no. Bad half of the draw. I know he's played decently well lately. Irons seem like they're coming back, but I've still got some concerns. I do. Homa at 85. Like the Bay Current, I don't know how in the world this considers it, positive, because he was really bad off the tee. Sanderson Farms and the Pro Core were fine, but he's generally really good at the Pro Core, so I don't want to give him as much credit for the top 20 there, considering he's a two-time champion there. He just loves that course. He loves playing in California in general. Sanderson Farms was encouraging. So, like, the irons just seem like they're coming back for Max Homa. I guess I'm in the camp of, I'm willing to be late on Homa. Especially since he's in the bad half of the draw. His long iron proficiencies aren't good either. Oh, whoa. 84th and 100th. I'm just not there. I'd much rather go to Pearson Coody at 100 more. Good putter on this surface. Plenty of distance. Like, we'll just highlight the two rows. Coody, a little bit better in terms of 200 plus. Both about equal in terms of bogey avoidance. Off the tee, Coody is much, much better. Coody has played par fours much better. So, Coody's just been in better form lately. Coody's also less owned. But I'm not... Coody I will play in a couple of lineups. I'm not going to play Max Homa. Anyway, there is a look at the core for me this week in some combination. A lot of times I'll go like Thor Bjornsson, Thompson, Hoey. In fact, like Griot probably deserves to be in here for me. I'll just highlight him a different shade because I'm using a little bit less of him. But, trying to combine basically three of these guys with Champ and or Roy, Pot Guider, Rogers, Patrick Rogers, Carl Phillips, Carson Young, I can easily put in there as well. I want to make sure I play some Rosner. I want to make sure I play some Ventura. But that's, the players that I'm using most often. So if these guys don't play well, I will lose. But that's what I have for you all in terms of the show this evening. Thanks to Phil and P for jumping into chat. Very, very much appreciated. The winner of the poll question looks like only a couple votes, but Michael Thorbjornsen is the player that community seems like they're not going to be playing as much. So community and I are a little bit at odds here, which is fine. I just think Thorbjornsen, even if he doesn't win, I just think he will play well this week. But thanks to Phil and P for jumping in the chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. Trying to give you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. I'm gonna try to get back on the winning ways, considering the Bay current was pretty abysmal for me. So feel free to reach out to me on social media how your week and weekend does in terms of showdown, in terms of DFS, week-long tournaments, wagers, all of that. So for all the wagers you've made this week for the Bank of Utah Championship, for all the DFS contests you played this week for the Bank of Utah Championship, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.